Weapon design for the uranium gun bomb was completed by February 1945. Confidence in the weapon was high. They named it Little Boy for its relatively small size, 10 feet long and less than 10,000 pounds. Designers considered a test prior to combat use unnecessary and impossible, since there was only enough U-235 for one bomb. The design for the more complicated plutonium-fueled implosion device, dubbed Fat Man for its rotund shape, was approved in March, and a test was scheduled for July. In preparation for deployment of the weapons, Colonel Paul Tibbets, a veteran combat pilot with extensive B-29 experience, was selected and placed at the head of a new unit, the 509th Composite Group. The unit began training at Wendover Field, Utah, dropping 5,500-pound orange dummy bombs. On April 12, 1945, President Roosevelt died in Warm Springs, Georgia, bringing Vice President Harry S. Truman into the Oval Office. Secrecy on the Manhattan Project had been so tight that Truman was not privy to the bomb developments and had to be briefed extensively in his first weeks in office. Less than 1 month later, German armed forces in Europe surrendered, but Japan did not. In June 1945, Tibbets and his unit moved to Tinian Island in the Pacific, 1,450 miles from Tokyo, where the Navy Seabees had built the world's largest airport to accommodate Boeing's new B-29 Super Fortresses.
The island was selected because it was within striking range of Japan. Number 2, it had the longest runways. Number 3, it had the facilities there to modify the area where we're going to load the bomb. I wanted to have my crews fly over enemy territory because they were not used to flying over enemy territory. I wanted to get practice flying, being shot at, flying alone.
Half a world away on the morning of July 16, 1945, in the New Mexico desert 200 miles south of Los Alamos, scientists and dignitaries awaited the results of the first test of an atomic weapon. Oppenheimer had given the test of the implosion device the code name Trinity, a reference to a devotional poem by 17th century English poet John Donne. The poem explores the paradox of a God that destroys in order to renew. But on the morning of the Trinity test, the implosion device did not look particularly imposing atop a tower 100 feet high.
One of the guys said that really the Trinity device owes a tremendous debt to 3M because most of it was held together with masking tape. It was a garage bomb, basically.
And it literally takes about 3 days to assemble one of these wartime devices. Think of them as crude laboratory devices. They're not production designs. You don't roll them off an assembly line. You've got to worry about, have we done everything right? What's missing? And there are stories where people last minute have a nightmare that they put something together wrong, actually go back in and discover that, oh, I inserted this wire backwards or that one.
The scientists waited anxiously at their posts. Some feared success because of speculation that the bomb might ignite the atmosphere and destroy the world.
Teller was 20 miles away at Campania Hill with Lawrence, and Teller mostly scared everybody to death because he was putting suntan lotion on his face and in his hands and as a guard against the ultraviolet from the bomb. This is 20 miles away.
All the scientists were 20 miles away, but most feared a dud, especially since a blank test of the explosives surrounding the core had failed just days before. Sensors showed that they had not fired simultaneously and would not have compressed the core properly.
It was really unnerving when the blank shot failed. The normal anxiety that one might have had with a device on which you had worked but had never been tested fully was heightened by the failure of the blank shot.
General Groves was lying on the ground in the prone position, facing away from the blast. What he said was going through his mind was, what was he going to do when the timer got to 0 and nothing happened?
5:30 a.m., July 16, 1945. The world entered the atomic age with an intense flash, a sudden wave of heat, followed by a tremendous shock wave. The ball of fire extended 40,000 feet. The bomb packed a punch equivalent to 20,000 tons of TNT, the high end of most of the scientists' predictions, completely vaporizing the steel tower and heating the desert sand into glass for a radius of 800 yards.
What got me was, I hadn't thought the heat of the fireball would heat my face exactly as its sunrise.
It became brighter and brighter and rose, and I knew that soon it will be used over Japan, and then it will not be just an experiment.
Groves returned to Washington to report the results to Secretary of War Henry Stimson and to make preparations for the use of the bomb against Japan. Later that day, Groves had his photograph taken for the publicity that would accompany the bombing of Hiroshima.
I said, General, look down right there at Tokyo. He put his hands on his hips and says, no, I won't look at Tokyo, Ed, but I'll look somewhere close to it. So he did, and I made the picture. I don't know, wherever he was looking was probably Hiroshima.
Although Trinity had been a success, questions remained about Fat Man.
The gadget at Trinity was not a bomb. Couldn't have been dropped. It was a gadget sitting on top of a tower. So could the bomb work? That would certainly have been the military view. We test them in action.
Moreover, the untested little boy would only get one chance to work.
The only way we could know for sure is if we actually test it, but we don't have enough uranium. So we're going to have to look at this and say, our calculations look good, our engineering looks good, but we don't know. And so little boy goes into combat as an untested weapon.
The course of the war, the work of thousands, the expenditure of billions, and the fate of more than 100,000 Japanese soldiers and civilians hung in the balance on the morning of August 6, 1945, as the Enola Gay flew 31,000 feet over Hiroshima. On its way home from delivering the uranium bomb to Tinian Island, the USS Indianapolis was torpedoed and sunk by a Japanese submarine. Of the 1,196 men aboard, only 315 were saved. The Manhattan Project will return on Modern Marvels.